Hey guys, welcome to another RRFC Hangouts. I am Jacob. I know you can't really tell because I'm missing my glasses today. It's this new thing I'm doing where I'm trying to confuse you as much as possible. Today we're going to be talking about casting and everything involving casting, from indie to studio. And of course, this is mostly going to focus on the indie side of things because obviously most of you guys are going to be doing this with little to no money. So we're going to be talking about what options you have, what is expected of you in terms of casting, and what actors are going to expect of you, etc., etc. Um, so we're going to kind of start with the process and what that entails. There's a few things to keep in mind with regards to casting. Number one, you're going to need to know how to write a breakdown. A breakdown is basically what you send out to casting agencies, or you can post online or anything. It's basically describing and summing up your story in like a log line or something, and it's also describing the characters because the actors are going to need to know their parts. They're going to need to know who they're auditioning for, what their backstory is, and even more importantly than that, casting agents and managers are going to be looking at the character descriptions, and they're going to be thinking of which clients fit those particular character types so that they can submit them to you for potential auditions. So let's talk about a few of the things that you want to include on a breakdown. Number one is a character description. This can be a short, mind you, short description of what the character's backstory is, who they are in terms of the story. A great example of one is if you have your main character, you want to describe what the plight is, what the idea of this whole story is. If it's an action adventure story, you're saying he's our hero. He's going to be, scaling the jungles in search of this lost treasure or something like that. You want to give an age range. So this can be, 18 to 25, et cetera, and so on and so forth. This is just going to give the talent managers and agents a good idea of who is in that age range that could possibly play that part. Sometimes you'll get an actor or an actress that's submitted that's a little bit on the older side or a little bit on the younger side. But sometimes they can play an older part. So don't always rule them out right away, just based on because they're actually, 27 and they need to play a 20-year-old. Like, don't rule them out just because of that. Look at their headshot, which is their picture, and then also look at their reel if they have one, because that's going to be very telling of their range. You're also going to want to include, if it pertains to the part, race, gender, and any conditions of the role. What I mean by any conditions of the role are if there's anything that the actor might object to or not be able to do, such as if there's any special skills needed, like if you have a character that needs to juggle or needs to play guitar, or this is a popular one for like HBO shows is nudity clause. So you want to make sure to include that on the breakdown so that the actors know going into it and they don't get the role and then all of a sudden they have to, get nude in a scene, and that's really uncomfortable. So you want to make sure you include that. Another thing to include when you're sending out breakdowns, include sides. Now, what do I mean by sides? That's SIDEES. So sides are basically excerpts from your script, scenes basically, that the actor will read for their audition. You want to make sure that these sides, when you're picking a side, that it's not a scene that's very short with no dialogue pretty much, because there's no point in sending that. You want to make sure that it's a scene that they can really play off of. If it's heavy action scene, don't throw that in there. Make it a very emotionally charged scene. If it's a funny script, make it one of the funniest scenes in your script. Just be sure to include those. And in the professional industry, we use something called Sides Express, which is an additional website to Breakdown Express. So that's something you can look into. That's obviously that's going to be something you have to pay for. So you may not use that, but if you are submitting breakdowns, you'll want to include the sides as something for your actors to read over. You'll also want to include information on what your actors should submit. So I mentioned before that they'll probably send you a headshot. They should send you a headshot. If they don't send you a headshot, you don't know who they are, or it's pretty much pointless. This is just, usually a close-up and a body shot, so you know exactly what they look like. But don't rely on the headshots in and of themselves. Obviously, if the role calls for a guy, in his mid-40s, and you get a 18-year-old kid submitting for that role, that's stupid. You don't need to even bother with that. But if it's somebody that's close to the age range and they sort of look the part, even if they're not exactly what you envisioned, don't rule them out. Just keep them in mind, put them into honestly, you can make categories. Like, people will submit via email. So make sure to put email categories for like first choice, second choice, third choice. And then you'll call all of them in for auditions. You just want to make sure that you have them in that order so that you know what to expect when you're going into an audition. You're not expecting like the greatest actor in the world, but they could surprise you. You also want to ask maybe for a reel, which would be a whole list of everything that they've done, like a compilation basically. When an actor does a project, typically the producer or the director of the project will send them a DVD copy or a file of the film that they worked on or the project they worked on. This is so that they can cut it into their reel so that when they show it to casting directors and crew members of the film, that they can actually be assessed based on their work. So you can kind of see their acting style, what they've done in the past, and also get a better sense of how they look on camera, because how they look on camera might be different from how they look in their headshot. And then, of course, you want to also include a resume. You need their resume so you know what they've done. And then if you do have a budget for this, include what payment there will be included in that also. So you've prepared your breakdowns at this point, and you're ready to send them out. So what do you do? Where do you send them to? For an indie filmmaker, the best choices are going to be things like Craigslist, Actors Access, Breakdown Express, Now Casting, Mandy.com, Backstage, SAG Indie, that's SAG Indie. And then for my Southern East Coasters, you have Southern Casting Call, which is an excoboard.com thing. I've used it several times myself, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty reliable. And then there's also 800 Casting. So there's a lot of different options, and I encourage you to look into all of them. Some of them will require some payment. Some of them won't. I know for certain that 800 Casting doesn't, and Southern Casting Call. I'm not sure about the others. Obviously, Craigslist doesn't. So keep that in mind. When you're posting, you can look into all of these, and they're all solid options, and just do your research, honestly. But all of these are going to be good options and will get you results. If you're not getting results, honestly, take a look at your breakdown. Determine what it is that might be hanging people up. If it's a really low budget short film, then maybe it's the no money thing, and that's going to be tough. But honestly, even for low budget movies, you'll usually get responses. Maybe it's the area. Maybe you widen your search a little bit more. And of course, if you're going to do that, you might have to look into paying for travel costs and lodging expenses. So these are things to keep in mind as well. But obviously, the best case scenario is you post to one of these sites and you get a lot of results back. There you go. Another option for getting your breakdown out there is cold calls. These are calls to local casting agencies, to management companies, wherever in your area that deal with casting. Now, that's obviously limiting yourself to what's around your area. If there isn't a lot of casting in your area, then you're going to be, in trouble in that regard, and probably won't be able to do that. But if you do, like I was in North Carolina, and there are quite a bit of small-time casting agencies in North Carolina, so I made a list of them and called them up, spoke to the person on the other line, got an email address for them if it wasn't already listed. And even if it was listed, I would call them up because you want to make sure that they expect your email, that they know it's coming, so that it doesn't get like lost or forgotten and or just tossed off to the side, especially if it's low budget. You want to get in good with whoever's running that agency. So a cold call is a great way to do that. So post your breakdowns, you get results back. Now you have to do auditions. You have to hold auditions. And you have two options for this, depending on the actor and their availability. So if the actor's not available for the dates that you're going to hold auditions, then they can do what's called a self-tape. This is where they'll submit a video recording of themselves reading the lines. This is obviously not the ideal scenario because you're not able to give them notes on their performance. It's just, a one-off, basically. Sometimes you can ask actors to do multiple readings of the same line, but it's still not going to be the best because they're going to be doing it in slight variations of the exact same way. It's not the same as if you have an actor in front of you and they read the line and then you say, I'd like you to read this line this time as if you're being chased by a deranged killer. They're not going to read it exactly the same way. So the ideal scenario is to get actors into the room so that they can actually be in the audition process and get notes. So go ahead and get your room set up. You want to have it be like a more professional place if you can help it. But obviously, you're limited by where you're at and what's available to you. So look into a space to hold the auditions. And then the people that should be present for this are the director, the producer, the casting director, and the casting associates. Now, you may not have all those roles. Odds are you're going to have a director. Odds are you're going to have a producer. But you may not have a casting director. You may not have a list of casting associates. If you don't have a casting director, you're not going to have them. So sometimes the director might be casting the movie, or the producer might be casting the movie. And if it's a short film, most definitely, probably. But those guys should always be present. It's actually fairly common for producers to not come to the casting process. They usually will be a lot more concerned with other stuff that they have to deal with. So I highly encourage you guys, if you're producers out there, to go to your casting sessions, because you might be able to offer some valuable insight. You might actually be able to offer some comfort, some assistance if the director's having trouble, and just offer your feedback too. I mean, you're part of the movie as well, but the directors absolutely have to be there. I mean, if the director doesn't show up, that reflects very poorly on the project. You want to create... So I talked about creating a professional environment. This is obviously... You can only work with what you got, but part of that is creating comfort, making the actor feel at home and part of this process and not just like on the outs. Basically, when they walk into a room and it's got the producer, the director, the casting director all lined up on the other side of the room, there's a wall there. So the actor is going to try, a good actor is going to try and break down that wall almost immediately. They're going to probably walk in and be very confident and shake your hand and crack some jokes because they're trying to break down that wall, and you should be trying to break down that wall too. The best way to get good performances out of the actors is to make them feel at home, to make them feel comfortable, because this is what you're going to have to do on set anyways, so you might as well get familiar with it now. So ways to do that is just asking them about their day, asking them how it was finding the place, asking them what they like to do. If you have younger actors, ask them about school, what their favorite subject is in school, and how they got into acting, what it was about this that drew them to it. Same as you. Maybe even talk about yourself a little bit. Talk about the project. Um, don't waste like an hour talking about all that stuff, but make sure to let the tension from the process of auditioning, and I've auditioned before, I'm sure plenty of you guys have auditioned for things before. It's stressful, guys. It's not an easy thing in the world to go into a room and just impress people. And if you want to get the best results out of this, make them feel comfortable. Things to look for in an audition. You're looking specifically for authenticity and appearance. So I mentioned before, they're going to send you a headshot. The headshot is probably not going to be what they look like exactly when they walk into the room. They're usually, gussied up a bit. It makes them look as attractive as possible, and they're probably not going to look that attractive when they walk into the room. So just keep in mind when you're going through the material with them that you're looking for nuances, interesting quirks, things about these actors that make them stand out from the rest. Because honestly, you're probably going to get a lot of, bad actors, people that just don't understand the process, don't understand how it works. And that's not their fault. Some of them haven't received any training. Some of them have received training in theater, and they're trying to audition for a film. And they're two different things altogether. In theater, you really have to overact. You have to project, and you have to reach the people in the back of the auditorium. In film, you have to be a lot more subtle. The camera's usually right up in your face. So that's what usually causes these bad performances, is people trying to overact. Because that's what they've been trained to do, or that's what they think they've seen. Another option is people will act out what they've seen on television or movies. They're maybe channeling Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. And you don't want them to do that. You want them to play the character the way they think the character would behave. A great way to get to kind of get that out of the way pretty quickly is to have them do the line reading their own way first. So don't give them any notes or anything. Just say, I'd like you to read the part the way you think the character would say it, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards. And when I say authenticity, I mean that for the story you're telling, that makes sense. That what they're doing feels real. It feels natural. Now, you might be telling a story that's some over-the-top, quirky, like Liar Liar or any other Jim Carrey comedy. It might be over-the-top comedy with like exaggerated behavior, but it all needs to feel authentic to that type of story. So you also want to set up for the audition. You want to set up a recording. So put a camera in the back and record all of your sessions, because it's going to come in handy afterwards. You're going to be able to analyze things a lot more in depth. You're going to be able to go back and look at those specific moments and hold them next to one another. Look at this person's performance versus this person's performance, because you're going to take notes over the day, and you're going to mark down the ones that you really liked. There was an instance when I was casting my third-year thesis film, and we had this wonderful actress come in. Her name is Elizabeth Lale, and she's gone on to do some great things since then. And she's a very talented actress, but she was not right for the part that we were casting. That was just the basis of it. But for the longest time, we thought she was, because we hadn't gotten the right person. So we were mistaking her talent, her acting prowess, for the right character type, the right character archetype. And we found an actress that fit that archetype 3 days later. And that by comparing the two footage, we were able to discern that actress, the one that we'd seen 3 days later, had the right look, had the right cadence, had the right authenticity that we were looking for. So that's why recording these sessions is super important, because you'll be able to look back later and determine who works and who doesn't, and what it is exactly that you're looking for. A few options in terms of doing the audition. You can have the actor read lines from the sides, or you could have them do improv. I've also seen I've seen directors do some very weird exercises with actors, such as having them close their eyes and say whatever comes to mind when you think of this. And I can't say personally, because I'm not a director, I don't know what that does, whether that's helpful to them or not in determining whether the actor can portray the part. I think the best option is, if you're doing a comedy, do an improv with them. Throw them out a scenario and let them have at it, because that'll be very interesting to see, is how well they can improvise and how they improvise. Are they funny? Are they not? For the more dramatic films, I think that might not be as important. You can still do improv. It's definitely helpful, but the sides and the material that they're given, seeing how they're going to read those lines and where they put the emphasis on the lines is really important too. And when you're giving notes, keep in mind, directors, when you're giving notes, encouragement is just as important as criticism, if not more so. The actors are collaborators too. This is something very easy to forget, is that an actor is a collaborator. They're not just an action figure that you set up and then you have them move around and do things. They're people that you can work with, the same as your DP, as your production designer, same as your producer, your editor. They're all collaborative entities, and so make sure to take into account what an actor is doing that might be helpful for you, or something you didn't even think about. That's something that's actually very common, is that an actor will spend a lot of time before they go into an audition thinking about this character and why they are the way they are, which is important for them to have the sides. Some people will say that they don't want to send the script. I always send the script just because I'd like the actor to know what the context is, but for a feature, that might not be the case. I'm talking about short films here. For a short film, I don't see any reason for you to not send them the script. It's a quick read. For a feature, I would send them the script, but that's just me. I think that's kind of going to be up to you and your creative team, what you feel. So let's talk about a little bit more of the details here. Money. So without any money behind your project, you're going to have to rely on some enticing details, some enticing deals. Basically, to keep in mind here, short films with no money, you're going to have to work with what talent you've got. So you're going to probably submit to Craigslist and a few of the other places that I mentioned. And you're going to get some responses back. And there's going to be people who are submitting to you with terrible grammar. They're taking pictures they're like sending you selfies from their bathroom mirrors as their headshots, and like you're going to be like, immediately you're going to think, this is garbage, I can't work with this. But keep in mind that some of these guys don't know how this works. Some of them, there might be a diamond in the rough, basically. So keep an open mind and work with what you got. If they're interested, have them come in and audition. And if it's a waste of time, whatever. I mean, at least you tried. But if they come in and they really impress you, then work with that. I mean, you never know what you're going to find. Now, with a feature with no money, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. I'm telling you right now. A feature is no small task. I mean, this is probably going to be over several weeks, if not several months of shooting. And for an actor to take that much time and not get paid, that's, almost unheard of. There are those that'll do it, I'm sure. But like I said, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. You're probably not going to get the best talent. I mean, that's the unfortunate truth there. So keep these things in mind when you're going forward. I'm not saying that you need to have money to do a feature. There's been plenty of features shot on iPhones, and so just be creative with what you got, and be sure to look at all your options. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to entice your actors, how to get them interested. There's a few things you can offer them, if you don't have money, that is. Credit for their resume. This is huge. I mean, an actor, especially a startup actor, is going to want to get as much experience on their resume as possible because they want to have that to show off, and they want to basically springboard off of this and get another project, until they eventually hit that project that makes them, successful. So don't underestimate the credit on this project and what that'll do for them. Now, of course, if this has no, if you're not planning to do anything with this, or it's just an independent thing that you're doing on your own time, I mean, the credit probably won't mean that much to them. So how about instead you say that this is going to be footage for your reel? This will be, we'll give you a free copy of the movie, of the project, for your reel. That's very valuable to an actor as well. Because as I mentioned before, it gives potential casting directors and directors in the future something to see their talent. So starting up actors will generally jump at that opportunity. Free food, that's a given. I mean, if you're going to be shooting over 3 days and you say all your meals will be paid for, you're going to get a copy of the movie, get a IMDb credit or whatever, they'll usually do it. They'll probably jump at that opportunity. So now here's a few other things. You may not have this at this point in your career, but keep this in mind for the future as you're moving forward. Things that actors like to hear. Is there a director of note attached to this project, or a producer of note? If there's someone of note, an actor of note, studio, anything that might be recognizable to people, then use that as a selling point to get the project out there and actors interested. Is this a school project? If it's a school project, use the school's success to kind of interest people, to kind of get them interested in collaborating with you and acting in your movie. And is this festival bait? Is this a movie that could be potential success at a festival? And I'm not talking about like small term festivals. I'm talking about larger festivals outside of state. Maybe not Sundance, but Slam Dance maybe, or I don't know, Tribeca, or any of these bigger ones in the area. Ivy is a great one. Reel to Reel. River Run, which is in North Carolina. So these are some festivals that you might consider sending your film to. And if you believe that this is a strong festival contender, then sell that. I mean, if it isn't something if you're not gonna send it to festivals, don't say it's gonna be sweeping the nation. Don't say that because that'll just get the actors angry with you afterwards. So that's almost everything I have to say about indies. Let's talk briefly here about studios and kind of how they differ. And then I'm going to go over a few other things with you with regards to some do's and don'ts that I've learned during my time casting, and a scenario about an actor if they quit. So with regards to a studio, the main difference is that they make offers. They don't waste a lot of time with readings, at least for the main parts. If you see a movie that stars Johnny Depp or, I'm blanking on his name. Let's just say Johnny Depp. So if it stars Johnny Depp, he's probably not going to have to read for that role because he's Johnny Depp. They probably know everything he's done at this point, and they just honestly, the role was probably written for him. That happens a lot in Hollywood. Is that writers will write roles specifically for certain actors, like Jennifer Lawrence, Bradley Cooper, Leonardo DiCaprio. These guys don't have to read pretty much. There are some exceptions. I think that for the girl with the dragon tattoo, Rooney Mara, I think, had to read for the part because it was such a competitive part and such a heavily coveted part that she did the reading. She really had to sell herself as the actress to play that part. But in general, that's kind of the rule. For smaller roles in smaller pictures, like smaller time movies, it kind of works like a machine. It's just a constantly moving machine. So basically the way it works is this. A company will hire a casting director. That casting director will put out the breakdown for agencies and management companies. And then they deal with the managers and the agents. They don't really deal exclusively with the actors. Now, the actors will audition for those short-term or the smaller productions. But the actors won't negotiate the deals. Their agents and their managers will handle that. I worked for a short time at a management company when I first started out here, and the way it would work is I would get in at 9, and I would have to be printing out the breakdowns for the day so that I could hand them to my boss by 11 o'clock. And it was usually a stack about this thick of just all the breakdowns from the previous day that had... And I had to look at them, too, because there were breakdowns for all kinds of projects. And the talent that he represented only did specific projects. So I would have to look at what kind of a project is it? Is this like a live action project? Is this a sitcom? And then I would have to look at the roles too, because the certain actors would not do certain roles. So we would have to look at co-stars versus recurring roles, and you have to basically break down all this information as you're going through each breakdown and determine which of these is viable. And also I had to know the clientele. I had to know who, their age range and what kind of parts they played so that I would know what would be probably viable. Of course, I would print off as much as possible, but it helps to know that because it's a machine. You don't want to waste people's time, basically. If you print out this stack and it's filled with just junk that they can't use, that's a waste of my boss's time. So you had to make sure that you were doing your job and looking through, and you knew all the clients, so you knew what was viable options. So that's what I mean when I say it's like a machine, is that you're in at 9, you're doing all this, and you got to get it in on his desk by 11. And you need to be, knowledgeable of how these things work. So that's kind of the way it works in studios. Let's talk about a few examples I've learned over the years. And I've only cast for like short films and some music videos and some smaller projects. I've never done anything big. So don't apply any of this to like casting a feature or anything, or not a feature, casting a studio movie. This is some smaller time stuff, like what you guys would probably be doing. So the biggest don't I think I've learned was you don't, and this seems like common sense, don't offer a role to someone and then retract it. We had a situation in my second year at school where one of the roles was this little girl in this movie, and the director really wanted this one actress for it, but we couldn't, or I think she said she couldn't do it. So we were like, okay. So we picked our second option, and it's not like this girl wasn't talented or anything. She was very talented, but our director wanted the other girl. So she wasn't available, so we went with our second option. Anyway, I do remember this was during the Super Bowl, and I got a text from my co-producer at the time, and she said, the other girl can do it now, so we don't need the second choice. So like the idiot that I am, I went ahead and messaged the family of the girl, the second choice, and said, we don't need her anymore. which sounds horrible, and it was, because basically what happened is we got backlash from that. The agency that represented her contacted me, and her parents contacted me and said how frustrated they were and angry that we would offer her the role and then retract it like that, because it's not good. It's just not common courtesy, guys. Like, use your head. Don't be like me. And I basically drove all the way out to the agency and personally apologized to the lady that ran that agency, and called up my director and my co-producer and said, "Hey guys, we need to do the right thing here and offer her the part." So that's what we did, and we were able to smooth everything out. But the bottom line is, if we hadn't done that, we would have burned that bridge with that person. And that's what you guys want to avoid doing. I've mentioned this actually before in my video on locations, is that you want to avoid burning bridges. And you want to avoid burning bridges not only with locations and with casting directors and all that, but with each other. Because if you come off as a controlling, guy that won't let anything go, then people aren't going to want to work with you. And that's going to make it really hard to succeed in this business, because it's honestly, in Hollywood, it's a small town. Everybody kind of knows each other. So anyway, that's a major don't. Now, here's something to definitely do. So you want to make sure to accommodate your actors' needs. Actors are basically fragile things. I mean, you need to make sure to, if they have allergies, accommodate that. If if it's a cold location, accommodate that. Make sure there's blankets on standby. We had a film we were shooting in, like 20-degree weather, and there was an actress in just her underwear, and she's out in the cold, and so we had to have blankets on standby constantly. As soon as the director said cut, they were there, and that was to help accommodate her. And we had hot coffee on standby, and I even bought some emergency, which is that powder stuff you pour in to keep you from getting sick. So you just want to make sure to accommodate them. Make sure that they're treated well. If you have the money for like a trailer or something, then give the actor a trailer. But if you don't have the money for that, try and get like a tent or a cover set for them, like a house or something, so that you can keep them warm, nice and toasty. Another thing, don't forget to have the discussion about the conditions of their role. If it's not on your breakdown, then you definitely need to mention it in the audition. But I think that you should mention it in the audition anyway, because if the actor agrees to do this part, and suddenly there's a condition of the role, I'll give you a great example. This actually will segue nicely into what to do if an actor quits. There was a film shooting, I wasn't a part of it, but that had a rape scene in it, and the actress who played the character, she was not okay with it, but she felt pressured into doing this project, and she hadn't really said anything prior. And I don't know all the details, of course, but essentially what happened is they got to the day of shooting, and she couldn't do it, and she refused, and she walked off set. And that was a result of a couple things. I believe that some of it was a result of not having it properly communicated to her and not properly talked about with her. But it could have been a number of things. But just as an example of what could happen if you guys forget to do those, like to go over these things that they could be uncomfortable with or not familiar with, or something like along those lines. Especially if it's a stunt. If you're going to have a stunt in your movie, you need to clarify with your actor if they're comfortable doing the stunt, or if you need a stunt double, and so on and so forth. Like, we had a scene where an actress was bashing a cash register with a baseball bat. So that's not really a major stunt, but it did require some safety procedures. Like, the cash register was built. We built it, because an actual cash register, when you smashed it, would shatter, and there'd be these sharp little pieces of plastic that could hurt the actress. So we wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. So we built a special one, and honestly, I don't really remember what it was made out of, but the production designer did a fantastic job with that. And even then, we took safety procedures. We had her wearing, I mean, it was a close-up shot on the register, so we had her wearing goggles, and I don't think we had her wearing gloves. But essentially, we wanted to run through the action because the ceiling was kind of low. Basically, you need to make sure to take precautions when they're necessary. We have a little bit of time left here, so I'm just going to go over really briefly what to do if an actor quits. So I think you should always have an actor sign a contract. This is, even if you're doing like a really short film, like no budget, whatever, write up a little contract or something like that, so that and have the actor sign it, because it's almost a safety net for you. You can lean on that, and if the actor's getting cold feet, and I don't want to say threaten, but that's part of it. Is pressure the actor is saying, you can't quit on us at this point. You signed a contract. You made an agreement. However, this may not always save you, because actors break contracts. People break contracts. This isn't... I've actually talked about this before in the locations video, is when you have a contract, that doesn't mean that it's a sure thing. Things can happen unexpectedly. I mean, the actress that quit on that movie I was talking to you about, she had signed a contract and she just left. And they were screwed for that day because they had a whole day planned with that actress. And so they lost out on that day. This is my main advice for you. I think you should have an understudy on standby. This way, it's the same thing as having a cover set, having another set on standby in case you lose your location. Same for an actor. If you have an understudy, it should be like your second choice from the auditions. Whoever you were thinking about casting, but they didn't quite make the cut, reach out to them and say, and you should do this for all your actors, you should reach out to them. Don't just leave them hanging. Say, thank you for auditioning, thank you for coming in and spending your time with us. We appreciate it, and you did a great job, but we're just going in a different direction. We'll keep you in mind for the future. When you send the email to, or make the call to the understudy, specify that you really like them and you'd like them to be the understudy for the role. So if they're the understudy, in theater, an understudy will learn the part, will go to rehearsals, etc., etc. In film, not always the case. In short films, I think it's a smart idea to have the understudy learn the part. But in terms of going to rehearsals and rehearsal time, that's going to be your guys' call. I think you might be able to make do without rehearsals. It's probably not going to be the same thing. Obviously, you're not going to get the best performance that you want, but it's going to be better than having no actor whatsoever. So keep that in mind. And just do your best to roll with the punches, basically. Casting is an arduous process, but it's super important because these are the people that will be the face of your movie. I saw a movie poster the other day, and I don't even know what the movie is about, but I was intrigued by it because I saw Emma Watson's face on the poster. Like, that's the kind of power you have with the casting process. Sure, you're not going to be casting probably Emma Watson, but you're going to be casting somebody that you'll probably want to put up on the poster or put still shots for the material you'll be sending to festivals. I mean, these people are going to embody your characters. Until they come along, your characters are just names on a page. They are going to embody them, meaning they're going to take the lines that you wrote and they're going to give them some sustenance. They're going to give them some legitimacy and some authenticity. and they're going to add to that. They're going to create a whole new persona, which is that character. So take this stuff seriously, guys. And I think right now we're going to go ahead and answer some questions. So let's go